She once made all of America laugh. A single raised eyebrow, a sharp-tongued line, a hurried little shuffle across a Beverly Hills mansion, and the audience couldn't take their eyes off her. Irene Ryan, who played Granny in the Beverly Hillbillies, was the embodiment of old-school comedy, tough, clever, and never loud. But there's one thing most people don't know. After every scene, when the lights went down and the others went home, she returned to a completely different world. No family waiting. No echo of laughter. A life nothing like what she portrayed on screen, from a youth spent hustling on vaudeville stages, to lonely final years in a forgotten house gathering the dust of time. What really happened to the woman behind one of America's most beloved TV characters? And why, even until her very last breath, did Irene Ryan continue giving the one thing she had left? Stay with us as we uncover a story that's never truly been told, about a quiet life that was anything but small. And if you believe some memories deserve to be kept alive, hit subscribe, not just to keep watching, but to keep hearing the things slowly fading from this world. On screen, she was Granny, the hot-tempered, stern old mother who also made the whole country laugh. Every sharp word, every look made the whole Clampett family get into shape. The old-fashioned grandmother seemed to have stepped out of an old America that we used to know. But Irene Ryan was not the person she played. Not really. Behind the gray wig and old-fashioned dress was a woman who had traveled almost every path of the performing world, from dusty vaudeville stages, wartime radio, to the glittering Broadway. A life without children, without family by her side. But she still stood firm, with laughter as her weapon and the stage as her home. Have you ever wondered, where did the woman who made America laugh cry when the curtain closed? Today, we will enter the story that Irene herself never told. Irene Ryan was born on October 17, 1902, in El Paso, Texas. She was not born into the limelight. She grew up in a small house where the wind blew sand through the windows, where artistic dreams often vanished before they could take shape. But Irene, then named Noblet, was not a child who would forget her calling. At age 11, she stepped onto the stage for the first time, singing Pretty Baby at an amateur contest in San Francisco. The $3 prize that day was not much, but it was enough to light a fire that would burn for the rest of her life. Irene left school early, leaving behind her high school years, and entered the world of theater at just 14 by lying about her age. It was not recklessness, but a strong belief that her place was not in the classroom, but in the wings, the backstage, and the applause. Her life as an artist led her to Tim Ryan, her onstage partner, her husband who traveled with her from the vaudeville stage to the radio. For 20 years, they were a couple both on stage and in real life, making audiences laugh together in the skit, Dumb Dora, co-starring in 11 short films, and building a place in the hearts of the American public. But while the laughter was still there, the feelings gradually faded. In 1943, they divorced. There were no children, no ties left except for stage memories and their friendship, which Irene kept until the end of her life. From then on, she went it alone. No scandals, no remarriages, no love affairs pursued by the press. Just a woman who quietly devoted herself and transformed herself into someone else every night, not to forget herself but to live anew. And perhaps it was in that loneliness that Irene Ryan truly became herself. Before television became the center of every living room, Irene Ryan made people laugh through the airwaves. Her voice boomed from old wooden radios, carrying the charm of an unhurried time when laughter came from intelligence and instinct rather than images. She and her then husband, Tim Ryan, formed a harmonious duo on the show, Tim and Irene. Her role as Dumb Dora, a naive but sophisticated woman, made her a household name across the country. Irene's laughter was not loud, but crept in like warmth on a cold afternoon. As the television wave rose, Irene did not leave the game. She continued to make short films, participated in major programs with Bob Hope and Rudy Valley, and maintained a special place for herself, not as a flashy celebrity, but as a diligent artist. And then in 1962, a role came along that forever changed her place in American memory. The Beverly Hillbillies premiered, the story of a country family who suddenly became millionaires and moved to Beverly Hills. They needed a grandmother, a character who was sharp, tough but emotional. Irene Ryan auditioned with a gray wig and a determined look. When she spoke, the studio fell silent. Granny Daisy Moses was more than a character. She became a cultural icon. With her high-pitched voice, piercing eyes, and unforgettable lines, Irene made millions of viewers laugh not because of the farce, but because she was so real that it seemed as if she had come straight from their own family. The Beverly Hillbillies quickly topped the charts after only 3 weeks on the air. Granny became a household name across America, from small towns in Kansas to crowded New York streets. But behind the lights, Irene never let herself rest. In a 1965 interview, she shared, "I was always the first one on the set. I was afraid that one day I would be replaced. I never believed that I was safe." Perhaps because of that, Irene never acted to be loved. She acted because to her, the stage was her breath. Each character was a chance to live again. And in the form of a silver-haired old woman, Irene Ryan gave America the most precious thing, laughter in the midst of many changing years. Irene Ryan never allowed herself to slow down. Even after the Beverly Hillbillies ended in 1971, she didn't retire, didn't seek retirement, didn't retreat to a cozy home. Instead, she returned to where her heart had always been, the stage. In her 70s, Irene kept taking on new roles on Broadway. In the musical Pippin, she played Berthe, a bubbly, energetic, and somewhat wild grandmother. She appeared for only a few minutes each night, but each time she did, the house exploded with applause. She was small, only 5'2", but she took to the stage like a fire. She laughed, she sang, she electrified the audience, and then she walked backstage with her heart pounding, keeping the same rhythm as someone half her age. But her body didn't lie. On the night of March 10, 1973, in the middle of a musical, Irene suddenly collapsed on stage. No words, no warning. It was not a scene in the script. It was her body reaching its limit. She was taken to Los Angeles, hospitalized at St. John's. Doctors discovered a brain tumor, a glioblastoma, along with atherosclerotic heart disease. The condition was serious. Her body, which had brought laughter to millions, now lay quietly between the white walls. On April 26, 1973, Irene Ryan died. No husband, no children, no family by her side. Her former co-star Beverly Hillbilly, who played Jed Clampett, once said that she was one of the sweetest and warmest people he had ever worked with. But in her final moments, Irene had no one to hold her hand. Television reported. Colleagues expressed their condolences. But only those who grew up with Granny, those who laughed, who watched the episodes over and over again every Monday afternoon, truly felt the loss. Because that woman did not just play a grandmother. She was part of their family. And perhaps the most bitter thing is not the departure, but the fact that she spent her life standing in front of millions of people, but left in silence. No lights. No curtains. No goodbyes. A final act without applause. But it made people choke up more than any role. Years after Irene Ryan died, an urban exploration team discovered a small, abandoned house in suburban California. The windows were cracked, the walls were covered in moss, and every corner seemed to be oozing memories. They had no idea who had lived there. Until they saw the remaining relics. A faded stage dress. An old photo frame covered in a thick layer of dust. A script with the name Irene Ryan printed faintly on the cover. At the foot of the stairs, a few rotten newspapers still preserved the image of a silver-haired woman, smiling brightly on the set. No one had ever cleaned the house. No for sale sign. No heirs. The house was left in absolute silence, like the last years of its owner's life. People were used to seeing her in the Beverly Hills mansion in movies, with a swimming pool, garden, and elevator. But Irene's Real house was modest, nestled between nature and time. Inside, time seemed to stop. The furniture was still there. Everything looked as if the owner had left the morning before, never to return. Her fortune, estimated at over $1 million in 1973, had not been used to buy more houses or invest in profitable investments. She had left it all for one purpose: scholarships for theater students. With no children, no family to inherit, Irene chose to leave the rest of her life to those who were beginning the journey she had taken. Amid the house's neglect, one thing remained. It was a trace of generosity, of a heart that kept nothing for itself. And that house, though now a gray picture of time, still whispered a story. Of a woman who once stood in the light, then quietly stepped away, allowing others to continue to enter. No bronze statues. No descendants to carry on the family name. But Irene Ryan left something else behind, something that cannot be measured in wealth or honor. She left a smile. A memory. A small light in the hearts of millions who watched the Beverly Hillbillies, heard her voice as Granny, laughed without knowing that the person who made them happy was living a quiet life behind the camera. When she died, Irene Ryan left her entire estate to a scholarship fund. Not a penny kept. No strings attached. The Irene Ryan Acting Scholarship was born, and tens of thousands of theater students have stepped out of the wings thanks to that gift. No one knows the names of all the people she helped. But every time a young student stood on stage and said their first line, a part of Irene came back to life. She once said, "If I can help someone continue acting, then I'm still here." Not like a star, but as a lighthouse for the next generation to enter the stage. Perhaps Irene Ryan's greatest legacy lies not in her TV shows or famous roles. It lies in the way she lived her life, resilient, humble, and completely in her love for the arts. And perhaps, in an age where people easily forget each other, a genuine smile, like hers, is what lasts the longest. Granny in the Beverly Hillbillies may have been just a character. But for millions of American viewers, she was the laughter of childhood, a familiar figure on the small screen, a memory of a simple and warm time. Irene Ryan lived a life that was not as glamorous as people often imagine Hollywood. But she left behind something more precious: sincerity in art, and compassion for those who would follow in her footsteps. If you ever smiled when you heard Granny's voice, if you used to watch her every night with your family, if she was a part of your childhood memories, share it below, because memories, if not told, will gradually disappear. And if you want to continue accompanying us in stories like this, quiet memories, lives behind the spotlight, please subscribe to the channel. Not only to follow new videos, but to keep together what should not be forgotten. Thank you for listening to Irene Ryan's story. We will see you again, in another memory.